Welcome, everyone, to another edition of the Spurging Out podcast, brought to you by the book Growing Up with Asperger's Lessons Learned and Shareable Wisdom on Amazon now. My name is Mitch Grace. I am the host of this podcast, as well as the author of the book just mentioned, and I'm joined, as always, by my co-host extraordinaire.
Hello, nice to meet you. I am co-host extraordinaire. I am an autism therapist, and I have a lot of insight into what it's like to deal with all sorts of stuff when it comes to growing up with autism.
Yes, so you get both perspectives on this podcast here. And in previous episodes, we've kind of alluded to how autism has kind of been distorted recently, like through the advent of more social media platforms with short-form content like YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, Vine, when that was still a thing, Snapchat. Autism has started to lose its bit of it. It has started to lose its definition. Like, I don't know about you, co-host extraordinaire, but I can't tell you how many times I've looked into comment sections of certain videos or whatever, or just, shit posts, and people will say, oh man, I wish I had the really good at math autism and not the obsessed with planes autism.
Wait, what? Are you reading my comments? What are you?
No. That was not a shot at you at all, but...
I know what you mean, though. Yeah, I mean, social media is already like, I'm gonna be real, it's brain rot.
Yeah.
And, I mean, even back in the day, like early YouTube, it was the same thing. People would make videos or post about some neurodivergence, whether it be like Tourette's guy or autism or depression. And then all the comments below would be people saying, oh, it's stereotyping the disability. So Tourette's guy is a perfect example where I don't know if that guy actually had Tourette's, but ever since he took off back in 2005 or whenever, every person thinks that's just what Tourette's is. Mm-hmm. And it's the same with autism now, especially with the advent of Instagram and TikTok especially. A lot of people like to go on there and talk about how they have autism. Some of them do. Some of them just do it for clicks, clearly, because their symptoms of autism are things that aren't real. Like they shake when they're excited and act like a giddy kitty cat. And you're like, that's not really... Like, stimming's a thing, but the way they're doing it is just purely performative. And then you see comments of people being like, oh, I'm just like this. Or, oh, I wish I was like this. And then, like you said, there's the stereotype of the gifted. Like, every movie did this where, oh, they have autism. They must be a genius at math or piano or engineering, which in reality is extremely rare. Most people with autism are just normal.
Yeah, so on top of the autism being distorted, I've also noticed that people seem to have a much more loose definition of autism. Like, for example, there's a podcast, I'm not going to say its name, but I don't even know if it's a podcast, but it's a very lengthy video series where a bunch of guys will go over movies, TV shows, etc., and they frequently make pauses to discuss what they're watching and why it's bad. Co-host, I'm pretty sure you know which one I'm talking about. And I don't watch it often enough, so I don't know if they do this, but I do know that in the comment section, it's like, oh man, this host is like so autistic, or oh man, this guy's autism is off the charts. Oh man, I can't wait for this guy to go, full autistic on this piece of Star Wars media or whatever.
They like use it as like a term for nitpicking or going into too much detail.
Yeah, and I'm just like, that's not...
Obsession.
Yeah, and so like, as an autistic person, when I think and speak literally, so whenever I hear, and I unfortunately interpret things literally, even though I really need to, I'm working on not doing that, having a bit more of a not taking things literally approach to things. But whenever I see comments like that, like, oh man, this episode was so autistic, or oh man, this podcast is so riddled with autism, or something like that, I just kind of get irked a little bit because that's not what autism is. Yeah, that guy's being way more passionate about this subject than a normal person was, but that does not equate to autism.
Yeah, like obsession and fixation is a symptom of autism, but it isn't the definition of autism. Mm-hmm. And then to say something is, this podcast is very autistic. It's like, well, that's just such a general, it's almost meaningless.
Yeah.
It's like you say it, and then everyone goes, I don't know what that means, though. Like, explain, elaborate.
Yeah, like...
And, I think that stems from the fact that autism, even historically, was a pretty broad definition. And now it's even broader, where, two people with autism they don't have the same symptoms. They don't act the same. They're completely different people. And autism has different effects on both of their lives. So it becomes so broad that it's really easy to just kind of slap anything with the label of autism, where it's like, oh, this person has anxiety. Maybe they have autism. And it's like, well, maybe they just have anxiety. You can't, it's hard to separate the two. But then when you get to social media, people just throw around the word like it has no meaning. I mean, like anything else on the internet.
Yeah, and that's not to say that I personally have an issue with, like, if... And that's why we have pauses, folks. So I'm going to restart that sentence. And that's not to say that I have an issue with, like, if a group of friends are playing games and you're like, man, could you stop being so autistic? Or if someone goes on a 15-minute rant about the F-22, for example, and someone says, man, would you stop being so autistic? Or that I don't have an issue with.
Yeah, because that's like, it's just people talking to each other.
Yeah, it's shit talking with your friends. That doesn't bother me. It's whenever there's genuine, like, if they mean it, if a person means it when they say, oh man, this podcast is so riddled with autism, or oh man, this person's so autistic, when they're clearly not.
Or when someone's trying to define autism, or like, I've seen TikTok videos of people like, autism's different, everyone. This is how my autism presents. And then they do a bunch of things that are clearly not related to autism. As someone who works in the field as a therapist, I watch the video and go, that's not autism. That's just you being weird or trying to, put on a performance for TikTok.
Let's actually focus in on that, for example.
That's what makes me angry.
The self-diagnosis of autism. It's...
Self-diagnosis of anything is a red flag.
Yeah.
There's a reason there are medical professionals.
Yes. Please keep going. Because
that's really it. It's just I don't like people who self-diagnose. Like, I know plenty of people who've self-diagnosed with autism without ever getting like a formal diagnosis. And like you meet them and you see the way they interact socially, and you're like, okay, they probably do have autism. But it's when people are doing it on TikTok for clout, or when it's like a 12-year-old or 14-year-old or 16-year-old, someone who is not, old enough or smart enough or wise enough to really know what their conditions are. To the point you have to worry about whether they're leaning into this character they've invented for social media, where it's like, do you actually act this way, or is this just something you do for social media? Because if you do it enough, you're going to start acting that way, and that's not healthy.
Yeah,
And then you have slews of people watching TikTok or whatever, and then starting to think, oh, maybe I have autism because I do this thing.
Is there you mentioned anxiety earlier and, the person's hands and whatnot. Is there like are there other, like, not trends, but like symptoms that self-diagnoses people use to quote unquote justify their autism that you've noticed?
The main ones are hyperfixation, like you mentioned, where it's like, oh, I'm really into this one topic, I must have autism. It's like, that's not. Sometimes people just like things.
Yeah.
Crazy, I know. There's like passion in the world. The other one is social anxiety. Oh, so many of them are just like, oh, I'm really bad in social situations. I'm awkward. And then you watch the video and they're like 14, and you're like, well, you're supposed to be. You're 14. Every 14-year-old is awkward. That's your job as a 14-year-old.
Yeah, you're a teenager.
Yeah. And so then you have to be like, well, autism's very different than just being socially awkward. It's being like incapable or having extreme difficulty in picking up on social cues and learning social mannerisms. That's very different than feeling anxiety when you're interacting with people. Like, they can coincide, but to say one is the be-all, end-all of autism is just incorrect.
Yeah. So as a behavioral therapist, have you ever encountered clients or parents of clients that, watch social media and they see these bad representations of stuff that isn't autism, and then they think, oh my gosh, we need behavioral services, and they call you, and then you have to explain to them, yeah, your kiddo or teenager or adult doesn't have autism. Has that ever happened?
I have never. Luckily, I've never had a client that I've worked with that turned out to just not have any disability or autism. That has not happened. But I do have parents and clients who both interact with neurodivergent social media. And sometimes it's good. A lot of times the parent will try to help by giving me advice on what programs we should do or what types of therapy we should do. And they'll say some woo-woo stuff. Like, they'll talk about getting these tools that will, like, I had a parent talk to me about rollers. This is a wild one. So bodybuilders or people who work out a lot use rollers to help push the lactic acid out of their muscles after a workout. And somehow this has become an autism therapy tool where you extrude your kid through a roller, and somehow that makes his autism better.
What?
It's not a thing. It doesn't work like that. They might enjoy it, like the stimulus. They might have fun with it, but it's not going to cure your kid's autism. That is simply not how that works at all. But I had a parent bring that up to me once, and I was polite about it. But at the back of my mind, I was like, how can you possibly believe? And it's just internet. You see something on the internet, and a bunch of people are saying it works, and, it's hard to refute 100 anonymous people saying something works. And then on the flip side, I've had clients who use social media almost to the hyperfixation level. I have a client, I think I mentioned before in the podcast, he'll just watch any social media, and all of his social mannerisms are picked up from social media. So he'll act like a YouTuber, which is not how normal people act. He'll talk like a comic book character, like, like all excited, fake. And it's just, he'll say slang terms or reference other YouTubers in normal conversation. You have to explain to him, like, people don't know who these people are. People don't talk like this. You really need to watch less YouTube.
Yeah, that's... I will say, growing up, I was very much guilty of that. Not talking like a YouTuber thing, but I would only talk in like movie quotes, and then even worse, very niche YouTube video quotes. I kid you not, there was this video I watched on YouTube called Super Smash Brothers Murder, and it's this... I'm not gonna say poorly animated, but it's a very roughly animated video about how the cast of Super Smash Bros. Melee just go and murder each other, and it's all bloody and whatnot. And the lines coming from the first part of that video, which is where that the character said, I would just say that ad nauseum, and my friends, the friends I had at the time, would be like, Mitch, for the umpteenth time, stop talking about this goddamn video. Yeah, that was...
I did that with movie quotes when I was younger, but I wouldn't quote them too much. Though I did love to say, "Can you milk me?" That was my favorite. It's from Meet the Parents.
Oh, I haven't seen that movie.
It's like I think he's trying to talk about how he milks snakes or something. I can't remember the context. It's just the way the line's delivered is really funny.
Well, even with proper context, that still sounds really odd, but...
Oh, yeah. And no matter how you say it, people look at you with side eye unless they get the reference.
That's very true. That's very true. Well, that's getting the reference. That's something I really had to learn, because even as an adult, like, I'll say something to a person as a reference to something that I think they have similar knowledge on, but they'll just look at me dead-eyed and be like, what the fuck are you talking about?
That's actually a pretty common thing with individuals with autism. Like I was saying, the client who would quote YouTube videos, he doesn't seem to understand that if he watches a video, not everyone else watches a video.
Yeah.
He'll even argue with me, be like, 11 million people watch this video. It's got 11 million views. And I'm like, there's more than 11 million people on Earth.
Right.
I'm not one of those 11 million.
All right, I have a story for you. This is a true story. So I was at GameStop, which is autistic enough, I know. But I was at GameStop picking up...
a Minecraft t-shirt, right?
No.
He's wearing a Minecraft t-shirt right now.
I am not. How dare you? So I was at GameStop picking up something for a friend, and there's this guy who, the instant I heard him talk, I'm like, oh, Lordy, you are on the spectrum, buddy. And he was going onto the front, I guess the register, the cashier, the employee, about Star Wars.
Oh, no.
And he was going about how everything about Star Wars is good. And then I walk up with the thing I'm going to get, and he looks at me and goes, can you believe this guy? Pointed to the GameStop employee. He says he doesn't like Star Wars. And I said, well, different strokes for different blokes and whatnot. And he said, no, man, everybody needs to love Star Wars.
You should have gone hard, been like, oh, based, my brother, Star Wars is the worst. I hate it. Even the original movies are terrible. Who likes Darth Vader? You should have just gone hard.
Man, a part of me kind of wanted to, but when he said that, I genuinely didn't know how to respond.
Yeah, that's a wild one.
Because it's like, buddy, there are going to be people out there that don't like the same things you do. Yeah. I forget what I said,
There's a lot of Star Wars to say it's all good. It's like, man.
Yeah, seriously. But like, I genuinely did not know what to do. So I tried to just, gently push myself away from the conversation so I could just buy my thing and get out of there. But Oh my god.
Oh, you could have gone the opposite direction. You'd be like, yeah, I love Star Wars. I love Jar Jar Binks. And just only talk about Jar Jar Binks and see how far you can get with that. Because there's no way that guy likes everything in Star Wars. There's no way.
Man, it's one of those things where it's like, is this rabbit hole worth going down? I said, nope.
Probably not. No.
Nope, I'm not doing this.
I feel bad for the GameStop employee.
Oh, I do. Because that guy was still there when I left, so I genuinely don't know what happened afterwards. I have another example. So this is a true story. I was at a college, and because I went to 3 different colleges during my time, and I was standing in line for one of these, for one of the cafeteria lines to get food. It was lunchtime, and the guy standing in front of me had a Waluigi hat on. And so I noticed this, and I say to him, "Hey, man, I like your hat." And he's like, "Oh, thank you, man. You know, man, I gotta represent my main man, because once again he got left out of Smash." And
it's true.
And so I was like, "Oh, well, you know, he's there in an assist trophy." Before I could finish this sentence,
oh, no. You triggered him.
Before I could finish this sentence, this man looks at me dead in the eye and goes, "Wham!" Like he's the character Waluigi.
That's really funny, actually.
Now, bear in mind, this line of people has like 25 people in it. We are dead center of it.
I'd be on the floor laughing.
I was so embarrassed. I legitimately just kind of looked down. I was like, oh, God, oh, man. Wow. And he was just like, "Yeah, man, they left out of Smash. It's bullshit. He's being relegated to sports games." He kept going, co-host extraordinaire.
No.
He kept going. I was just like, well, I don't know what to tell you, man. I don't know what to tell you. But I was a worse person for that experience. I have never encountered autism that extreme. Holy shit.
Rip Waluigi. I can't believe they kept my main man out of Smash instead of just put him in all the sports games. How dare they?
But he said it. He said the why. It's not just the fact that he said.
Yeah.
It's not just the fact that he said that. He said it loudly, and that he kept going. Some days I'm reminded that there are people more autistic than me.
Oh yeah.
So.
Yeah, controversial opinion. Wario is better than Waluigi. I'm putting it out there.
You know what? Agreed.
Yeah.
# agreed. I mean, Waluigi isn't even in the WarioWare games, so...
Yeah, he's not even in Smash. He can't be that good.
Seriously, right?
I just triggered a bunch of people.
You triggered that one guy. I saw at lunch that one day.
He felt the disturbance in the Force. It was actually the same guy who was really into Star Wars. He's just really into a lot of things.
No, it wasn't. I guarantee you it wasn't. So... I mean, we're probably going to go into this a bit more in a later episode, but...
It's a pretty broad topic. I mean, social media is so pervasive in all of our lives that it affects everyone, let alone, neurodivergent people. Mm-hmm.
Now, I want to give good examples, because...
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I guess we've been... I'm very negative on social media, but there are good examples. Yeah. There are plenty of YouTube channels that actually go over, like, genuinely good therapies and programs you can do with someone who has autism, or help people realize they do have autism by actually explaining what stimming is and how stimming isn't bad and you shouldn't stop someone from stimming and things like that.
Yeah, and then there's this one YouTube channel I came across recently where I'm blanking on what his name is, but he's an autistic guy who lives in Australia. And I think his channel video was, when you go to his YouTube channel, the first video you see that plays, every time someone logs into his channel is, "Oh, so you think you see an autistic person?" But it's like, it's not like sarcastic or snide. It's like, "Oh, you think someone has symptoms of autism? Well, let's go through what they are." And I watched the video and it's genuinely brilliant. And because he walked through, like, oh, is it monotone voice? Is it mixed eye contact, meaning too much eye contact or not at all eye contact? Hyperfixations. Is it, not knowing when to stop or when to keep talking?
Yeah, when a conversation ends, or pausing for a little too long in between responses in a conversation.
Yeah, so there are genuinely good examples. But to circle back to the negativity, because there's something you mentioned, co-host extern, that I really want to tear into. using autism for clout.
Oh yeah, that's the one that triggers me the most too.
What triggers me, what tilts me the most, as a term that you use, co-host extraordinaire, what tilts me the most. For those of you who don't know, being tilted is a Texas Hold'em term, which I will explain never. So there's what drives me to no end is when people who are not in marginalized groups try to come across or try to claim autism so they can be a part of a marginalized group.
Genuine stolen valor / autism blackface, as I've heard people refer it to.
Yes, it's that drives me up the wall to no end. It's like the people who do this, there's one person in particular who will remain nameless.
Oh, no.
There's one person, this person specifically has stated a number of times that they are exploring a diagnosis. And I guarantee you I've said this on the podcast before. And it's just the most...
Yeah, either you're undiagnosed or you're diagnosed. You don't get to explore it, really.
It has such an elitist tone to it that I'm just like, I'm like, bitch, are you for real? It's like, get diagnosed or keep your fucking mouth shut, you fucking tourist.
Yeah, actually.
So, co-host extraordinary, you might be better to explain this than I am, but as I understand it, a tourist is something that's mostly used in the, LGBT groups where it's like, someone's like, oh, I think I might be gay or bi or non-binary, or I might be a woman even though I'm a man and whatnot. Then it turns out they're not at all.
Yeah, tourist is a derogatory term used in the LGBTQ community for someone who tries to fit into the LGBTQ community despite not actually being LGBTQ. Like, you can be an ally, but it's someone who tries to pass themselves off as maybe they're gay when they're not, which is just, insulting.
Okay, so I'm going to so that is a term I'm flat out using.
I think it applies equally to people who fake having disabilities or mental illnesses or being neurodivergent on social media.
Yep, they're tourists, and so this person in particular, who I really hope I'd never meet in real life because I'm gonna have words for him for this individual. But it's I've noticed there are two types of people who try to claim autism, who are autistic tourists, to be a part of marginalized groups. It's that there are people who are doing it solely for clout, and to those people, go fuck yourselves. But then there are other people who like do a lot of like charity work for marginalized groups, whether it be like donating their time or raising awareness through social media. And so they're constantly surrounded by, marginalized groups. And so, a part of me thinks they want to be a part of a marginalized group. That way they feel either A, oppressed in some way, or B, it makes it feel like that their charity work is worth it.
Or it may be just something even more innocent. If I had a nickel for every time I had a coworker or another therapist in my field be like, maybe I have autism. I've heard that so many times, a million times. And the thing is, when you spend all your time with someone with with different social mannerisms than you start picking up on them. That's just normal. That's like what everyone does. If you hang out with a group of people, you're going to pick up on the way they act socially and start acting a little similarly. So if you're hanging out with people with autism all the time, you're going to pick up a couple autistic social mannerisms. That doesn't make you someone with autism. That actually means the opposite. If you're picking up on social mannerisms through osmosis of being near someone, you probably don't have autism.
Yeah.
That's like kind of the core feature of autism is not picking up on social cues and mannerisms.
Yeah,
so I could see someone who works like at a charity for people with autism, who's always surrounded by people with autism, starting to pick up on their mannerisms and being like, well, maybe I have autism. Mm-hmm. And no, they just
Yeah, that's not how it works. If you work at a shelter for like gay folks that got kicked out of their homes or whatever, and you start picking up on mannerisms or whatnot, it doesn't mean you're gay.
Yeah.
Like,
well, at least gay is very easily definable. It's like, who are you attracted to? Like, you'll know if that changes. It's not gonna suddenly be like, wait a minute.
Yeah. So.
But yeah, with people with disabilities, I think it's more insidious of the ones that do it for clout, where they're clearly. I mean, it became like a social media fad to fake having mental illnesses back in the day. Like even in the early 2000s, it was like, Oh, I have depression. Oh, I have bipolar disorder. Oh, the big one was I have multiple personality disorder.
Oh,
There was so
really?
many people who would fake having multiple personalities, and it's like it's one of the rarest conditions you could have, and it never manifests the way they think it does. Like people with, I think it's DID, dissociative identity disorder. They're like two separate people, and it doesn't really work like in the movies. They don't swap between them at will. It's so silly. But that became a fad, and it was a lot of that. It was a lot of the like cool mental illnesses that make you edgy or something. I don't know,
Oh
man.
God.
And somehow that has extended now to being just everything in the DSM, including autism.
What's the DSM for those that don't know?
It is the standard book of disorders: personality, emotional, mental. I think even physical. It's been a while since I've read it. I read it back in college, and it's essentially the updated manual for like defining these things. And so autism's in there, and along with every other disability you could name.
How about that?
But yeah, that's where we're at now. Is that people on social media do it for clout or to feel like they belong. I feel like a lot of the people I see on like TikTok, they're again awkward, gangly teenagers, and I think in a weird way that faking or promoting the idea they may have a mental illness or neurodivergence helps them fit into a community online where they're just lonely in real life.
Yeah, and then there's something else I've noticed too. It's that a trend I noticed is that when people when they use social media, when they try to claim disabilities, it's like, have you noticed that there are sometimes they'll say, "Oh, this is how autism manifests in women," and then this is how autism manifests in men, and it's like,
Yeah, I've heard that.
it's like,
It's the same. It manifests the same in both.
yeah,
Spoilers.
spoilers.
Like men and women act differently, and their autism can sprout up differently, but it's not gendered. Okay, if you have every individual with autism is different, whether they're a woman or a man. There's no female autism and male autism. It's just autism for both. Same.
Yeah, autism for both. It's that, and what bothers me is that, so like when I've noticed when women specifically try to, do the whole, hey, it's manifesting this way for me, it's manifesting this way for me. It's like when they try, I don't understand why they're comparing it to men versus women. I don't understand why they're making it a man versus women thing where it's like, women will go, oh, it makes me quirky and shy and whatnot. Men, it's like, I'm obsessed with hell divers too.
Yeah, I've seen those memes where it's like autistic girl and she's just being cutesy and quirky, and then it's autistic male and he's like just sitting in his like bedroom naked eating Cheetos.
Oh,
like,
God.
I've seen those memes that always give me a good laugh. But no, at the end of the day, the truth is it affects both genders the same. I mean, obviously it manifests differently in every individual, but that doesn't mean it's gendered. Yeah. And at the end of the day, also, like, I feel like a lot of the people, it's like, oh, my autism manifests in this way. Sometimes that's like genuine insight to who they are and they like really thought about it or have been told about it. But sometimes I do feel like it's a put on where it's like, if you're sitting here explaining how your autism affects your life, you better have like a good understanding of it. I guess, instead of just saying, haha, sometimes I'm quirky. Sometimes I bounce up and down, and you're like, okay.
That specific example, that's not even autism. That's fucking ADHD.
Yeah, I mean, people with autism do bounce up and down. It's a stimming behavior, but it depends on the individual. It's just, it's always weird to see it on social media because you're like, you can never know if it's true or not because you don't know that person.
That, and I've noticed a lot of you can't really explain autism in short form content.
No.
You can try, but if you really want to paint a good picture of autism, you can't really do that in short form content.
Yeah, because autism isn't just like an obvious set of symptoms like most disabilities. I mean, anything that's mental or personality or social, it's not going to be like, oh, I have bumps. It's not a specific medical effect. It's something that has affected your entire upbringing in your life. So it has a humongous array of effects on who you are and how you live. So,
right.
Someone with autism isn't like, oh, I just stim. It's like, well, it's going to be more than that. It affects your ability to pick up on social cues. So you might have more difficulty with your friends. You might have a different group of friends than you normally would or stuff like that. And it's stuff that is extremely hard to explain. Like, it's a whole life.
So how would let's say you're a parent and you're nervous about all of the, let's call it false autism videos and short form content out there. Where would you recommend a parent? What would you say to a parent that's like, "Hey, I'm nervous about my kid getting their head filled with lies. What should I do? What should I do?"
Are we talking about like a parent with a kid who's been diagnosed with autism, or a parent with like a kid who is neurotypical and they're just worried they're gonna watch too many TikToks?
Let's go.
Because
let's do both. Let's
yeah.
do both. Yeah.
I mean, for a neurotypical kid, just let it be. I mean, they might act like they have a disability when they're like 12 or 14 when they're in the awkward gangly age, but a lot of kids do that. It's not that weird. They grow out of it. That's pretty much standard. When it comes to like if your kid actually is neurodivergent, like actually has autism, then that's when I start like putting up those boundaries. Like I was telling you about my client who, again, learns all of his social mannerisms from YouTube. One of our programs is to limit how much YouTube he can watch and to repeatedly iterate to him that, hey, YouTube isn't real. These videos you're watching, this is not how actual people act in the normal world. You know, just making sure he understands that this isn't real. He should not act the way he's seeing these people act in YouTube. So that's an important one for parents to understand, is that like if your kid is neurodivergent and they're watching a lot of social media and they're starting to pick up things from social media, like if it's just phrases or slang, whatever, but if they start acting like a cartoon character or acting like a YouTuber or just talking in a way that doesn't help them socially, you need to really step in and explain to them that like what they're interacting with on social media is not real life. Mm-hmm. Same with like even just cartoons. I mean, a lot of people with autism pick up their social mannerisms from cartoons and they talk and act like cartoon characters, and that's something we have to work on, where it's like, you know, most people think that's cute when you're 10, but when you're 16 and you still do it, people don't think it's cute anymore. They think it's weird and creepy. So you have to work on them with that to be like, hey, use your normal voice, not your cartoon character voice, stuff like that. I actually specifically have a client who talks like he's in a theater production at all times.
Oh, no.
And so our program is to constantly step in and be like, oh, no, use your real voice. Use your adult voice, please. You know.
Use your indoor voice.
Literally, yeah. Because at the end of the day, you know, they're all capable. They just have to be reminded. And it's like once they get in the habit of using their normal voice, they'll start talking in the normal voice. Mm-hmm. And they won't... you know, make people uncomfortable.
Yes. We'll do a separate video podcast.
Podcast.
We're going to do a podcast dedicated to how autism is portrayed in the media at some point.
Oh, yeah, in like film. We can go over specific films. There's so many.
And TV shows.
Yes.
Especially the one show that has gotten memed to hell and back
yes.
because of...
The Big Bang Theory.
Yes.
That's. Wait, is that the one you were thinking of? I thought you were going to say The Good Doctor.
I was going to say The Good Doctor.
I was making a joke.
Yeah, so a little foreshadowing for you.
Oh, and to fall back or to go back on what we were just talking about, because I wanted to be clear. Every parent should take interest in what their kid is engaging with social media-wise.
Yes.
Like, no matter what. You should make sure your kid's not watching, I don't know, horrible stuff on social media.
Yeah,
just
don't.
Always true, because, like, social media is just entertainment, but for children it may be more than that, and you got to make sure they're not watching stuff that's going to lead them to saying or doing horrible things or just not understanding the real world.
If I was a parent, I'd be concerned with my kid stumbling across content that's made for adults.
Yes.
Specifically content that's made for simps.
Oh no.
Because kids are impulsive, they're impressionable, and...
Yeah, I mean, it's on Twitch now. It's like you think your kid's watching, someone play a video game on Twitch and they're watching a hot tub stream. And you're like, oh
seriously.
no.
So that'd be my... Like, if there is a way for you to turn on, like, parent mode on any of these apps or TV or the internet in your household, do that.
Yeah,
absolutely do that, because there's like you brought it up with Twitch. Exactly, like there's so much more adult content that's on other platforms that kids can access or that can lie. Like say enter your age. Yeah, I was born in 1980.
Yeah,
internet.
or political content too. It's like you don't want your kid watching political content, then repeating these very controversial political statements because they clearly have no understanding of what they're saying. They're just repeating what they saw on YouTube. Mm-hmm. You definitely don't want your kid doing that.
Yeah, so there's... Like, there was this thing on YouTube that a lot of people got annoyed with, where it's like every single YouTuber, regardless of what their content is made for, had to clarify, hey, mine's either for adults or for kids.
Oh, yes.
But, like, and for a lot of people that, like, review movies and whatnot, they had to, like, make that disclaimer. It's like, hey, I make my content for adults and whatnot.
Yeah.
That was annoying. I can understand why that's annoying, but I actually think that's a good move on YouTube's part, because it's like, hey, no, now your parents know, okay, yeah, this is for adults, don't watch this, but this is for kids, you can watch this.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, the parents just need to be parents. Like, I don't have any sympathy for parents that are like, oh my gosh, my kid grew up, my kid's such a screw up now, when your kid had unrestricted access to the internet or unrestricted access to, like, TV or movies and whatnot. It's like, yeah, no shit.
Well, I mean, there's also plenty of psych studies that show that, like, constant use of social media throughout upbringing is bad just for the mental health. They tend to have depression more. They tend to have ADHD more. They need that constant stimulus. It's like social media is a cool entertainer. It's a good, way to kill time. But if it's the only thing you do in your free time, it becomes all-encompassing. It affects the way you see the world and the way you feel about yourself. And if you're a parent, you should spend time with your kid.
No, exactly.
Enrich your kid, stimulate them using other things than just a screen.
Exactly. Yeah. The what's the quote? Comparison is the thief of joy.
Yes, and social media is designed to make you compare your life to everyone else's,
Yeah,
who are lying about it on the internet.
Oh yeah, and then there's these grifters who will take advantage of that, or like these people who have Lamborghinis. One's like, I am a super alpha duper super mega gigaton dude, and I have these Lamborghinis and cars. Where's your Bugatti?
Yeah, you look away and your kid's gonna be investing in crypto before you know it.
Oh no, they're gonna steal your credit cards and do that.
Yeah, right.
Which is pretty much the end all for that. But there really is a lot of harmful stuff out there, not just, false interpretations of autism or false diagnoses of autism. So,
yeah, social media is, honestly, if I were a parent and I had a kid, I'd be afraid of social media to some extent because there's just so much. I mean, anything can be on social media. Anything can be on YouTube. Anything can be on the internet.
Yeah. I remember.
And so it's like you really do have to keep a watchful eye on that stuff.
Yeah, I remember when LiveLeak was a thing.
Oh, geez, yeah.
For those that don't know, LiveLeak was a website that you could watch people get beheaded, you could watch people die, get hit by trains.
We're going to have to cut this part of the podcast.
Really?
I don't know.
I mean, hey, we're gonna get demonetized anyway. Who are we kidding? but yeah, LiveLeak was where you could literally watch people die on via CCT footage.
You could watch extremely violent content that's obviously not appropriate for really anyone, let alone children.
Yeah, so that website is no longer up, although I'm sure you could find it on pirate sites and whatnot.
Yeah, now I go to World Star Hip Hop for all of that. That's a joke. That's a joke.
Oh yeah, you should also make sure your kid doesn't have access to the dark web, or at least doesn't figure out how to get there.
Gosh.
And then keep VPNs a secret from them. Not a secret, but make sure they don't have access to a VPN, because they're just going to get around every single parental control loophole you throw at them.
That's true. VPNs are a good way to get around parent locks.
You should make sure
they're not committing any scams online. I actually had a client who was scamming Apple by making fake accounts to get free Apple Cash, and then eventually Apple found out and closed their family account, and mom and dad were pretty mad because they used it for all of their devices.
Wait, really?
Yeah. No, he was scamming Apple, and when Apple found out, they just they restricted the account, locked it out. And the whole family used the same account. So
ouch.
Yeah.
I'm surprised the Apple didn't go after the family. That sounds like lawsuit worthy.
He stole I don't know, $20-$30. Probably not worth it. But still, it's okay, you got the family account locked, and that's going to be more of a problem for everyone.
Yep.
But yeah, that kind of stuff it exists. That client is a tech genius, so he used a VPN and all sorts of stuff. He really knew what he was doing.
Sounds like it, yeah. And he almost got away with it if it wasn't for that pesky Apple.
Apple's too good.
So, autism.
But yeah, I guess bringing it back to specifically autism, though, people with autism, especially when they're younger, tend to be more susceptible to the influences of social media and picking up things from the internet. So just because they pick up less from the people and they know in real life, so they're going to pick up less from that and more from things that are online, especially things that are overly emotional, overly expressive. People with autism tend to gravitate towards cartoons because of that. They're the overexpression, the way that people explain how they feel instead of just, subtly expressing it. That all happens on social media and on the internet, and that makes people with autism, or children with autism more specifically, more susceptible to the influence of social media.
Yeah, especially if your autistic kid is socially isolated, if they don't have a lot of friends and whatnot. So, loneliness is like one of the biggest, I'm not going to say enemies of autism because that's too strong of a term, but
it is one of the biggest pitfalls.
Yes.
Of someone with autism. If they can't make friends in real life, and internet, it's easy to make friends on the internet. Just got to make sure you're not making the wrong kinds.
Yeah, developing parasocial relationships through people on the internet is very difficult. Well, it's very... Once the parasocial relationship has been formed, it's very difficult to break. Mm-hmm. Because here's the thing: the people, these YouTubers, they don't show. That's not their. Like you said earlier, it's all fake. That's not their true selves. Mm-hmm. And so, if you meet them at a con, let's say, for example, your autistic kid goes to a VidCon and they meet the YouTuber they really like, and they've developed a parasocial relationship with. They are in for a very harsh slap in the face of reality coming because if you act the way to that YouTuber, the YouTuber's gonna be like, what the hell's wrong with you, dude?
Yeah, I mean, even like in the most mild sense, it's the parasocial relationships are just generally not healthy. Yeah. Because again, acting like you're friends with a YouTuber, like, I watched them for 100 hours play Binding of Isaac. It doesn't mean I actually know them. So if I meet them in real life, I'll be like, hey, I like your content, but I'm not going to act like I'm their friend. That's obviously not how that works.
Even
if they're super nice or exactly the same as they are in the videos, it's still not normal.
Yeah, and then to fall back on your point on people adopt, habits and mannerisms they see on social media. Prankster YouTubers, prankster TikTokers, all that stuff. Oh God, steer far, far away because
I feel like they've fallen off lately. I haven't seen many of them.
Yeah, they have, but they still lurk around. But just don't keep your kid far away from that because the prankster YouTubers, they oftentimes they don't get away with the stuff that they do, and if your kid, adopts their mannerisms, then they're gonna do it in an environment where that's not okay, and either they're gonna get the school's gonna punish them, or your kids or another kid's gonna beat the crap out of them.
I remember when prank YouTubers were the heyday on YouTube. That was a common issue because most of them are faking the videos. I mean, no one's actually getting pranked. They're all involved. It's scripted.
Yeah.
But then kids go to try to do it at school or their parents, and then they end up getting in trouble or shot with a .32 revolver, I think was one.
What?
Some wannabe prank YouTuber tried to prank someone and they got shot because,
wow.
Throwing, I think they tried the bomb bag prank. They were throwing a bag that they acted like was a bomb. Yeah, not a good idea.
Mine is the one that drives me up a wall. I never worked in a grocery store, but I worked in a restaurant. I mean, that's okay. I don't even know why I brought that up, but but remember the gallon challenge where like you pretend you're slipping and you drop a bunch of gallons of milk or whatever, and now the employee has to clean it up.
Yes, the one that was less of a prank and more of just being a public nuisance.
Yeah, oh God.
I remember that the lady who did the ice cream one, where it was a TikTok trend to open ice cream at the store and eat it and then just put it back.
Oh.
There was a lady who did that in some state, and she got arrested. Got a felony charge because that is a felony.
Good.
It's like, there's limits. But this is all to say, this is what random people did in response to these videos. Someone with autism may be more inclined to not understand that these videos are fake or actually do more.
Especially if these YouTubers are like really popular and whatnot. And like
they have a lot of clout and a lot of money because then people want to be like them.
Exactly. They want to emulate them.
I want to be Logan Paul.
No, why? You're going to get your ass kicked by Mike Tyson.
I mean, honestly, it's a win-win.
I mean, that's fair.
I get to meet Mike Tyson.
Yeah, he's also going to kick the crap out of you.
Sounds like a win to me.
All right. Well, is there anything else you want to say on this subject, co-host extraordinaire?
So I think to really wrap it up, the main thing is there's a lot. I mean, social media is just, I mean, the internet is everything.
Yes.
Anything you can think of can be found on the internet, which makes it a place that really does need to be navigated with some finesse.
Was that
And children aren't able to do that.
Yeah.
And children with a neurodivergent, children with disabilities are even less likely to be able to do that. So it's really important as like a parent or even just a guardian to really make sure what your kid is looking at and engaging with the internet is appropriate and is not affecting them in the real world in a negative way. Like, again, you don't want your child who may have autism to be picking up their social mannerisms from YouTubers.
Yes. And also, that was that a Bo Burnham reference I saw in there? You said everything you could find, everything you think of is there to be found.
I know.
Oh.
If that was a Bo Burnham reference, it was completely just luck.
Now, there's a song he has called Welcome to the Internet, and he has, one of his lyrics is very similar to what you just said. So I'm like, oh, is that?
No, I swear, I wish I were that smart, but I'm not. I was just saying words.
And then, so final thoughts on autism being distorted via social media. Yeah, there's a lot of bullshit out there. Just, don't take everything you say at face value. Like, get different opinions. Get actual opinions from like professionals. Be like, hey, this autistic person on TikTok does this.
Yes.
No.
Trust professionals over YouTubers or Facebook mom groups.
Yeah. Oh God, don't get me started on that. That's another topic for another day.
We'll have a whole episode on fake medicine.
Yep.
Because I could go on about fake autism treatments like that roller one. That roller one's one of the more wild ones, but I've up and down miracle mineral stuff. I could list off hundreds of ones that I've heard from parents where I'm like, yeah, don't do that. That won't work.
Alrighty, and well, that's a little tease for an episode in the future. So my name is Mitch Grace. I'm the host of the Spurging Out podcast. I'm the author of Growing Up with Asperger's, Lessons Learned and Shareable Wisdom on Amazon right now. Thank you all for listening. Co-host extraordinaire.
All right. Thank you for having me on the show. I've had a good time.
Alrighty, thank you, and we'll see you next time.